What's up, Tube? Welcome back to Low Guido's Chop Shop, the second best gel blaster channel on the tubes. And before you do anything, subscribe. Hit subscribe, because that's a cool idea. And buy me a coffee. There's a link down there as well. Alright, now that we've got that out of the way, I want to tell you about today's sponsor. It's NordVPN. No, it's not, I'm just kidding. I'm not sponsored. And I'm likely demonetized by this point. Alright, cool. I'm talking about ports today, because a lot of my builds I either remove ports or put ports in, or various things depending on what the brief is. And a lot of people have asked me, why ported? Why ported? Why not ported? Why am I doing this? And while I kind of assume that it's fairly common knowledge, it's not really. I mean, if you've just gotten into gel blasting, you've just bought your first gel blaster, you don't really know why a port would be in the cylinder and why it wouldn't be in the cylinder. What's the advantage? Why bother? So I just thought I'd do this video to run through it with you guys so that it's a bit clearer as to why we have these two different types of cylinders. There's various, actually there's more than two. I mean, I've got ported and unported, but I mean the position of this port makes a difference as well where you put it. But we'll get into all of that right now. Alright, now I don't want to bore you to death with the mathematics, but it is pi r squared times the length. So, if your cylinder is a full cylinder, you take a measurement of the internal diameter, which in this case is 23.7. Alright, so I'll write that down. That's our diameter, 23.7. Now, we want the radius, which is obviously half the diameter. So that's divided by 2, which gives us 11.8, or close enough to. So that's our radius. Now we want to get our length measurement. Now, the entire length of this full cylinder is 72 millimeters. Keeping in mind that the cylinder head itself is going to take a bit out, so it'll be 72 minus the depth of the cylinder head, also minus the distance between the O-ring and the piston head, if that makes sense. So for what it's worth, in this case, I'm just going to take let's call it 7 millimeters. I'll take 7 millimeters off just so we've got the idea. So 72 minus 7 is 65. Alright, so this is the radius and that's the length. Alright, now, so it's pi times the radius squared times 65. So you can do that in your calculator, or there's calculators online that do all this, but I just thought I'd show you where it's at. And that should give you 28. Let's just call it 28.4 cc's. It's actually like 28 28,433 cubic millimeters, if you want to get technical, but roughly 28.5 cc for a full cylinder. Now, ported in my case, this port here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure this distance from the port to the top there, which is 43.4. Then I'm going to take away the thickness of the cylinder head. Interestingly enough, not the O-ring and piston head as well, just the cylinder head. I'll just measure a cylinder head. Let me just measure a cylinder head. So this one, from the flange to the rubber, is 6.5. So 43.4 minus 6.5. Okay, so that's 36.9. We could probably call it 37, but that's for the length of the ported cylinder. For what it's worth, the internal diameter is the same, 11.8 for the ported cylinder. And that gives us 16.1 cc's, or 16,141 cubic millimeters, if that floats your boat. Alright, what does this mean? Now, I have a barrel here. This particular barrel happens to be a 7mm internal diameter. So it is a tight bore. 7, and the length of it, it's off camera, but it's 43 centimeters. So 7mm internal diameter, 43 centimeters, or 430 millimeters in length. So if we do the calculations for that, for this particular barrel, I'll call it B1. The volume of this is 16,548 cubic millimeters. So that's 16.5 cc's. Can you see a problem here? If I was to use this ported cylinder with this barrel, the volume, the swept volume inside this cylinder is actually less than the volume inside this barrel. That's not even taking into account other variables like the nozzle length and the T-piece length and other bits and pieces. But this, if I put this cylinder with this barrel, the blaster would struggle to actually push the gel all the way through that barrel. So this would not be an ideal setup. Even for the full cylinder, this would be, I mean, the full cylinder would achieve something, but there's a certain ratio which I have found to be probably the sweet spot, and that's a 1.8 to 1. That's what I like to use. So basically, I like my cylinder volume to be 1.8 times that of the barrel, and I found that is the best ratio, or thereabouts. It's, you know, if it's a little bit more or a little bit less, it's not going to be the end of the world. But if it's a lot less, then you might find yourself in a lot of trouble with actually being able to get the gel out of the end. So this is all well and good. You're probably saying, why don't we just use full cylinders on everything? And that's a good question, because surely more is always better, right? Unfortunately, that's not the case. What happens is if you have too much volume in your cylinder, then the ball is leaving the end of the barrel, and there's all this extra air pressure behind the ball as it leaves, and it becomes very unpredictable as to what that turbulent air leaving the barrel is going to do, and that ends up having an adverse effect on your trajectory. You can cause the ball to spin in random directions depending on which way the air exits, and so your things like hop-ups become ineffective, and things like getting range and any form of accuracy just become completely ineffective because the excess air that is creating turbulence around the outside of the gel as it leaves. I'm just going to try and put this into some sort of visual for you, and I'm going to take it to the manometer because I've got it, and why not use it? Alright, now for the purposes of this video, I've got an average, standard cylinder head, standard full cylinder, and a pretty average plunger, although I have put a green O-ring on it, and I have done something special. I have slathered the cylinder, the plunger head and O-ring in silicone grease. And I've actually seen people recommend that you do this. I've done this for the purposes of the experiment. I do not recommend that you ever put grease on your cylinder head or O-ring because of the reasons that I'm displaying here. The reasons I've done it is because the grease will actually fill up the vent holes and everything around, and the gaps around the O-ring, and it won't allow any air to escape, and therefore it will create phenomenal vacuum on the backstroke. But for the purposes here, I want to keep sealed as much as possible so that we can see how much volume is actually being swept in this experiment. So yeah, I've done it for this purpose, but I don't recommend that you do it. Alright, so I'm attaching my average full cylinder, and I've got my plunger here. So now with the grease and everything that I've got on here, hopefully when I push this up, it will hold the pressure all the way up and it won't release. Alright, so that looks like about 32 centimeters of water there, give or take parallax error because I'm standing off to the side. I'll just try again. Might have got a little bit more that time, 35 I think that is, plus or minus parallax. Yeah. In my previous experiments, I found, I think, the best sealing O-ring with the best sealing cylinder head and nozzle and everything. I found that I think 36 centimeters of water was the maximum pressure that I was getting from a fully swept cylinder of any sort. Alright, so let's take this out and replace it with the ported cylinder. Alright, sorry guys, I just realised that the top of the manometer was not in shot for that last demonstration. Look how much vacuum that draws. Alright, so I'll do it again just so that you can see that I wasn't lying. There you go, around 34, 35, that's 34 centimeters of water, but around that area. And as you can see, until I let go of it, it holds that pressure quite well thanks to the silicone grease that I have blocking all the ports. Alright, so 34, 35, that's where that is at. Now we'll pop the ported cylinder in. Alright, I'll try and get this in shot so you can see. There's the port. So I guess the point that I'm making here is when I put this piston in here, absolutely nothing I'm doing with this piston at this point is making any difference to anything whatsoever at all. So not until I get past the end of this port, which will be now, that's when I actually get pressure. And I'm looking like 20, maybe 21 centimeters of water there. So let's try that again. Let's wait for it to equalize. I did that one a bit faster to see if it would go any higher, but when it equalizes, it's sitting on 21 centimeters of water. So 21 centimeters of water is probably the most that I will get out of this particular ported cylinder, which for what it's worth is a Li-Hui vector cylinder. Yeah, 21 centimeters. It's a Li-Hui or a Horg cylinder. Now, that's one of the funny things is that they actually put these cylinders into the Steyr, given that the Steyr had such a phenomenally long barrel, and then they put this ported cylinder in. It made no sense. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I've got the barrel attached to the manometer, and I'm going to use a stick and some gel balls in the barrel. I'm going to push that up the full sweep of the barrel. And there's the ball just popped out. So 23 centimeters of water. Now, you might be asking, what does this all mean? Well, we've just proven that the maths is correct. Do you remember when I measured the volume of the cylinder that was ported and the volume of this particular barrel that I had? I said that the volume of the cylinder was just slightly less than the volume of this barrel. So we've just proven it there with when I sweep the volume of this cylinder, this barrel and the ported cylinder, the barrel came up like about a centimeter of water more than the cylinder that was ported did. So that, and also I think if we do the maths, so the full cylinder was 34 centimeters of water and the ported cylinder was 21 centimeters of water. So if we do the maths, I think the vector cylinder is about 61% of the 100% cylinder or the full cylinder. And that's where you get your percentages from. You know, when you're looking at buying ported cylinders and you buy like 100% or 80% or 60% or whatever, I believe I'll have to sit down and do the maths. Someone in the comments will probably correct me, but I think that's about 60% of the full cylinder from our experiments here. The other thing worth noting here is if I do hook up my barrel to this manometer and push 20 centimeters of water, the sweet spot that I've found is 1.8 times. So in order to be efficient, the most efficient cylinder for that particular barrel, you want it like 1.8 times that. So if this was indeed 23 centimeters swept of water, swept volume of the barrel, you'd want about 41 centimeters of water from your cylinder. I've never actually seen a cylinder that'll do 41 centimeters of water. So that just says that barrel is probably too long for anything that I've got. But having said that, that's not saying it won't work. You're just going down to maybe 1.6, 1.5, 1.6, around that area is probably the biggest swept volume I've seen. Anyway, so that's a big barrel. It's like a 43 centimeter barrel. So yeah, I mean they work. I've had builds with long barrels that are sort of outside of the efficiency range, but yeah, you will lose FPS. So basically, if you're going for a build with a short barrel, you want to have a ported cylinder. And if you're going for something with a long barrel, you want to have your full cylinder. That's what it comes down to. And the calculations are there. If you want to calculate the exact volume that you want, the exact ratio of cylinder to barrel, you can do that. Just like I said, it's between, I mean, I think 1.8 is about the sweet spot, but anywhere between 1.4 and 2 times the barrel volume will give you a good cylinder volume, and that'll work. If you're coming down to like equal volumes, yeah, you're gonna have problems. It's not gonna work very well. You might have the balls just dropping out the end. Now, I often get people saying to me, Guido, stop giving me the problems and just give me the solution. Like, just tell me what I need to buy. And I always say, look, I don't know what you have. You could have any number of length of barrels with any number of internal diameter. I don't know what you have, but I've given you the knowledge to work out what you have for yourself. But for those people who still just want the answers, I will say, from my experience, if you've got a full port, then a 35 centimeter barrel is generally the best sort of go-to barrel. That's the best sort of 35 centimeters I find is the sweet spot, regardless of whether it's a Type or it's 7.5 or 7.0 or whatever. I found about 35. If you don't want to be bothered to sit down and do the maths, just buy a 35 centimeter barrel if you've got a full cylinder. If you want to actually work it out, then props to you. Go work it out, find out exactly what the length you need is, and cut your barrel to that length. Or if you've got a short barrel like a CQB blaster, work out exactly where your port needs to be and cut your port to that length. I found, for what it's worth, these Vector cylinder, the position of the port on these Vector cylinders just seems to be right for most of the builds that I'm building that happen to have a short barrel or for whatever reason. So I feel that particular cylinder happens to be a real good one. So I guess I could say if you're lazy and you don't want to work it out, get that for ported for a short barrel, 18 centimeters, 15, 14, whatever, get that one. And for any long barrels, get that one. That's if you don't want to do it properly. But whatevs, I will leave you with the information and you can do with it what you will. Peace out. Thanks for watching. Still got some patches. If you want to buy some patches from me, hit me up on Facebook and we'll sort it out. Thank you. Peace.